Welcome, everybody, to Secret Sauce, the show where we unpack business tips, life hacks, and advice from industry leaders. I'm Karly, iacono. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Shlomo Chopp, the managing principal of CPS, a distressed debt consulting company. Welcome, Shlomo. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Karly. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. So, before we jump into your advice, which I cannot wait to hear, being the contrarian that you are, tell us a little bit more about CPS and the kind of work that you do there.
Yeah, thank you. So, commercial real estate, when everything's going well, is great. But if you look beneath the surface, commercial real estate is really this huge octopus with many tentacles. You got a lender, you have a buyer, you have a seller, you have property management, you have tenants, you have legal, right? There's many different parts of it. And so long as everything works like clockwork, all you need to do is push the button, right? You as an owner, you need to make decisions on leasing. You as a manager need to make decisions on repairs. Everything is great. But when the system has an issue, that's when there are potential challenges. And what makes it even worse, what's harder, is that when you dig beneath the surface, these are very complex structures beneath the surface. So the question is, how do you resolve these problems? And most owners, operators, or anybody else in the process are not experts when you really dig through. What I've been able to do with experience over the past 10 plus years since the last downturn is really dig into the mechanisms behind the loan docs. And what I would do is when a borrower sees or a owner sees that there's issues coming down the pike, is be able to address how to respond to these issues in a way that conforms with success when the next problem arises, right? So let's just say, for example, right, if you know you got to turn right, you got to turn the steering wheel on your car. That's great. What if the steering wheel doesn't work? You got to maybe find some hand crank somewhere that turns it to the right, right? And what if that crank doesn't work? What happens next? Well, the problems do pile up. So if I'm good at what I do, I essentially, by coming in and being a distressed asset manager, help them see multiple steps in the future. They look back and say, okay, this guy was our fixer, I guess, is really what you'd call it. So that's the component of what I do. And it's guiding, owners from dealing with a tenant to dealing with a lender to even dealing with litigation and how that works within the confines of all the documents they've signed, always side by side with their attorney.
I think we're going to just call you Shlomo the Fixer. It's a lot shorter. Just summarize
That,
all that, just the fixer.
that implies success. I love it.
There you go, right? You're solving problems, which is what we all like to do. So, on that vein, before we move on, what are some things that come up that you can help resolve, or how do people get into these distressed situations to begin with? Give us a few high level examples.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing I'd say is that when the problems start when you try to solve problems, right? If we just go back, historically, the reason that structured finance CMBS came around had a lot to do with the savings and loan crisis because there was an issue, right? So they solved a way to get new people into buying it, and it became more complex, right? So the same thing when you take a loan. When you negotiate your term sheet, you're negotiating with a salesman. The second you sign that term sheet and it's out of their hands, you're now negotiating with someone who's supposed to execute that term sheet. They don't care if the deal dies or not. So the key thing is to negotiate as many points in that term sheet phase as possible. And there's a lot to dig in on that. I'm not going to do that right now. So that's point number one and most important. And sometimes that's looking back too far. Ship sailed. So let's talk about what you could do now. What you could do now is not be a traditional owner, right? They say with regards to developer, a lender and a developer, right? Give a developer money and they'll want to build something. Give a lender money, they want to put up a reserve, right? It's your natural tendency. The reality is when you see a problem coming down the pike or you see a potential issue, do not assume it will resolve itself satisfactorily. Assume there may be an issue and understand your alternatives. So call someone who you trust that can help you with this. In the event that's me, I'm glad to chat. I mean, call doesn't cost money. I'm glad to have a conversation and sort of see where the issues potentially can come up and see 3-4 steps down the road, because it's a game like chess. You gave away all your leverage in your loan docs. The question is, what can you do today to create some more in a way that doesn't backfire and trigger recourse guarantees under your loan docs?
Wow. Okay. So if we have an owner or an investor who's in a tricky situation with their debt, maybe their tenant's not paying, or there's something with TIs unresolved, or any number of issues, and there does not seem to be an easy out in the loan docs or easy resolution, that's when they call you to see what else can be done.
Even if
Yes?
it seems easy,
Okay.
give me a call. Let me look through it with you. Let me give you, Donald Rumsfeld said, the unknowns, right? We all have our unknowns.
Okay, excellent. So, with that perspective of solving extremely complex problems and seeing some complicated deals in the industry, as a background, that's a great perspective. So, what is your view on where we are in commercial real estate? What's your view on the market in general?
So I'm a very strong believer in things reverting to the mean. I think, office buildings are changing, no question, but ultimately tenants will have to lease space, and ultimately tenants will have to lease space at rates that make sense, meaning not just that a owner needs to solve for a basis, but rather a tenant needs to solve for the amount of tenant improvements they want that owner to put in. So just to say that offices are dead and rents are going to go through the floor doesn't make sense. Obviously, there's going to be a weeding out of different office product, different office types. So I think it's extremely important to sort of keep an eye on the ball. Don't act too quick. Make sure that your ultimate customer, the tenant, figures out what they want to do, and then ultimately see how that changes, take from there.
Exactly. What is one thing that you firmly believe that is in opposition to what you hear in the market every day?
um,
Just one.
Today's the best day to buy.
Okay. You think it is or is not the best day to buy?
It's a moronic comment, because if I can buy today a stock that goes down tomorrow, I could have waited till tomorrow. Then again, to say you could time markets is ridiculous as well. I think if you're going to make an investment, especially in commercial real estate, it's going to be a 3 to 5 to 10 year investment. If we want to learn anything from, the inventories stocked up in retailers, they made a decision based on COVID, and look where we are right now. Or e-commerce demand went up so high, and look where we are now with regards to Amazon subleasing industrial. So I think, just as an investor, saying today's the best day to buy is basically saying I'll just buy at any price. Right now, you'll say, well, risk adjusted based on yesterday. You got to be you got to be much more introspective about it, and you got to really think through, in 10 years from now, will I be happy that I bought today? And the lack of return, even though you have high inflation and you're trailing inflation and technically you're losing money. If you're an institution, I get it. That means you're taking money from grandma, put the money in the bank, pushed it up, and eventually you won't give back a return. So I guess you have to think about it that way. But if you're a private investor, even a high net worth investor, it's not about losing return. It's about your principal. Protect the principal first. Take that off the table.
Longer term perspective. I like that perspective a lot, because we're hearing just so much turmoil right now, right? Should I buy now? Should I buy next month? What about in 3 months? What if the rates go up again? I should have bought 6 months ago. It's all over the board with people trying to time it
And I'll
perfectly.
just add, when the right deal hits you in the face, take it. Don't be like, oh, I'm not
Right,
sure, I got to wait, right? You got to act. But
right.
wait, say no
Don't
so
be
many
afraid to
times.
act too.
Yeah.
Love it. Personal advice, life hack, business tip that we did not cover. What keeps you going and makes you successful?
Wow. I'm always hungry. Um,
Literally
I'm
or
literally and figuratively, yes, food and everything else. There's no question. I'm always hungry. So with regards to the hunger of food, I sort of push that away. But with regards to everything else, I wasn't born into money. Um, Everything I know, with people's help, I've taught myself. Right. So just a matter of just outworking the next guy, but smart and thinking long term, like, where do I want to go and how do I work harder? And then I think, we spoke about it in another conversation we've had. I mean, you got to look and take care of yourself as well. I mean, I didn't, I've lost a lot of weight, and I think it's extremely important. I realize at a certain point, as I get older, I can't continue going at the pace that I am unless I take care of myself as well. So I think that's extremely important. And working out, I think, is also important, like we spoke about as well, because, it takes the stress and depression. You could also think without distractions, without phone calls. And I think it's very beneficial as well. So I'd say just outwork the next guy, try to be smarter than the next guy, or with the next guy, quite frankly. There's a lot to go around. And just take care of yourself in the process, and everything else would solve for itself.
This has been so much fun. I always love talking with you because you have such unique perspectives on things. So I'm very happy you could join us. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up for today?
No, thank you. I really appreciate you having me here. This is really a thrill, and thanks.
To everyone watching, that was Secret Sauce. We're so happy you could join us, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thanks so much, Shlomo.
Thank you.